This episode's brought to you by everynowhearmusic.com. That's my artist website. It's brought to you by holisticpianoacademy.com, which is my coaching and mentoring website. And it's also brought to you by tlwrites.com, which is my freelance writing service designed specifically for artists and creative professionals. Moving on, this is one of the most enjoyable conversations I've had in a really long time on this podcast. That probably came out wrong because I've had the privilege of some really iconic artists on this show for a while. Can't believe I'm calling it a show now. But Sebastien, though, just takes on an entirely different dimension because it really feels like an extension of our normal conversations. We talk about that, so I don't want to give it all away. But all things said and done, you're in for a real treat and some genuinely helpful insight from an extremely sensitive and an extremely talented artist with whom I can visit specific spaces with regards to the lifestyle of a musician with the kind of freedom and safety. So without much further ado, please welcome Sebastien Heintz. Hello fellow beings, welcome to Tapasya Loading, a safe space to attempt honest, raw and authentic conversation in homage to the ancient act of stoking a sacred fire. We are officially rolling. Sebastien in the house, and Sebastien's got the quintessential podcasting mic, which I'm slightly envious of right now.
Oh my god. It's such a great mic for recording as well.
I know, right?
On guitar and yeah.
Pretty much. It's one of my favorites. I actually have one lying around, but I've been using this handheld condenser of late, which I seem to have grown quite fond of as well. So yeah, well, you're the more professional between the two of us tonight.
I'm just pretending, man. Just pretending.
Join the club. No, that's actually one of the first things we want to talk about. Well, to start off with, welcome and thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Can I just stop you for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Before we go on.
Absolutely.
Is it normal that I can't see you? Is it on purpose?
Yeah, I was just about to say I usually keep video off. Let me say.
All right, cool.
Let me say hi for a bit, so you know that it's me. Hiya.
Hey, buddy.
Mostly because this podcast. I mean, I keep saying for those of us who came late, this podcast is audio only by intent, because I want to contribute to a counterbalance to the sensory overload screen time has ended up being on us of late, you know?
Right, yeah, well, it's a very good thing.
And sometimes we'll keep video on with some guests. I've had guests who expressed explicit preference for the video being kept on. And needless to say, I'll support them on that. But I've noticed that, when the participants are part of the same experience, the audio-only listening experience, the conversation also takes on a very different nature. We are forced to focus on our listening skills a little more.
Yes, it's very true. Very true.
I know, right? It's like a skill so many of us are forgetting to nurture in a manner it really deserves these days. At least, that's what I feel.
Well, I guess, yeah, definitely. It's all this the mediatized thing that we're going through now with social medias and what's not, and YouTube, and just keeps calling for our intention.
There's that. Absolutely. There's that. And for people like you and me who are independent musicians and entrepreneurs who have had a bulk of their work being transferred to online only, screen time's gone through the roof, man.
Oh my God, don't tell me about it. I'm trying to stay away from it, but it's really hard. And we talked about it when promoting our music, I think. And this is when it's getting tricky, because you have to find the right line between getting caught up into the promotion on Instagram and TikTok and what's not, and still having a healthy lifestyle, and healthy relationship with it, which can become tricky quite quickly, I want to say.
Indeed, so right.
So definitely a good choice here.
Cheers, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for being part of the movement, so to speak. The irony being, our correspondence, which has almost been over a year now, I think, has only been on the screen. You know, without these screens, we just criticize. We would have never met.
Yes, and it's the beauty of it. You know, there is some kind of magnificent poetic aspect of social medias and the way we can connect with people that we've actually never met in a physical form. You know,
I know,
but
right?
it's magical in a way, but it's just trying. I think it's just a thing of health, you know, and just finding the right amount of everything and the balance, I guess.
Absolutely. It's like any tool, you know, without the right dosage, needless to say, it can turn into an addiction.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But for our audiences, me and Sebastien actually literally did meet on Zoom while doing an open door attendance for a postgraduate degree none of us ended up going to. After which we both ended up attending the Univers-Îls London instead, thanks to Sebastien. So Sebastien's my cohort this year and a collaborator, and also turned into a dear friend over the course of the past few months.
Yes.
Sebastien, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm good. I'm very good. I am working on some project that you've been part of, so you can't see it here. You won't be able to hear it now on the podcast. But I'm surrounded by synth and keyboards, and I'm working on a little something for the master degree you were talking about. So I'm quite excited.
Beautiful. I'm always in deep admiration of all these synths and instruments you're so wonderfully surrounded by. They always give me a good mood.
Yes, I think they kind of do, don't they? It's. I was talking to my wife yesterday about how instruments can help with inspiration, and we had a whole debate on materialism, and because I kind of tend to a minimalist lifestyle, but it kind of stops at the door of my music room, you know, and I kind of feel inspired by the instruments. So I tend to have lots of gear, but I'm trying to keep it sane, you know, and healthy in a way, because I've ended up in the past like buying lots of things, and plugins like is the best
Example,
yeah. And just
overkill.
And overkill it, and just not having all the mind space, I guess, to the head space to use it and to learn it.
Indeed.
So now I'm trying to carefully select the new instruments I bring into my room. But it's still a room filled with instruments, you know, comparatively to my home, which is kind of sparse and very minimalistic. So yes, I love instruments.
Yeah, that actually brings me to the first point that I found extremely noticeable about your artistic persona. You have this really elegant balance between eclectic influences and color and texture, both orally in the music you make and visually. By now I'm a little familiar with your studio, at least from a camera perspective. But also always maintaining this minimalistic, balanced aesthetic, which I'm a huge fan of. So let's start there, man. How do you think this artistic voice of yours, both visual and oral, developed? Where do we find its roots?
Well, I just want to say thank you for the kind words to start off. And well, I kind of feel like it starts off in my heart, because it's all from that will and need. I was going to say need to express something, you know. And I think emotion can be complex, but in a way they're very singular, and they have a specific form, you know. And I feel like when I want to express music, I want to kind of touch that form or that sense of simplicity that is an emotion in the end, you know. And whether it's complex or not, I think it's something that comes from our soul, you know, from our heart. And so I guess it comes from there. And then obviously the music I listen to probably tends to inspire what I want to make, because I don't listen to music with like thousands of instruments. I like simple music that can take you somewhere. And it's really what I'm trying to cultivate in my work, I was going to say, but in my music in general, and in my life. And I'm trying to cultivate that intentionality throughout music and lifestyle. So it comes from there, I think.
Beautiful, man. But these words, they're like a brain massage for me right now. Especially after 3 weeks of construction work and my apartment being the mess that it is.
Oh my God, yeah. I can't imagine.
Yeah, you know about this for my listeners. I've been trapped inside an apartment with neighbors all over doing construction work illegally after bribing local committees. So it's been quite the ride these past few weeks. And both your words and the vibration you bring across is so welcome right now. I'd kill to be crashing at your place right now, believe me.
Well, anytime, man. Anytime.
Cheers. It's a little complex, being that it is that I'm in the middle of East Asia and you're in the heart of Europe. But cheers. I appreciate that. You refer to simplicity, which I find beautiful, but I think you and I both know that striking that balance and also attaining that aesthetic simplicity actually is built upon years of discipline and complex structures.
It is. It is about learning a vocabulary, I guess, and trying to understand fundamentals, process and workflow and methods, but then trying to get away from them, understanding them to be able to use them, but being kind of distant with it, Absolutely. It's like a second nature, but it's not a process. So I think this is where it can get tricky sometimes, especially I don't know. For me, it was coming out of music university, and you get all these amazing concepts taught to you, and you learn so many things.
Yeah.
And it's like you want to use them all.
Yeah.
But you can't use them all. You're not using all the words in the English language or in the NLE language.
Yeah.
In a sentence or in a conversation. So it's about trying to understand what's needed. And I think this is going back to simplicity, and it's going back to listening and being aware.
So true. It's a little like nutrition, There's so much food out there, and some of it is all amazing. Some of it is junk food, and some of it is medicine. But regardless of what it is, you can't just eat everything at one meal.
Exactly. I mean, it's the thing with buffet,
Oh,
you can eat whatever you want.
Yeah.
Just like putting the image out there, but it's like you can eat whatever you want, but what do you need? What will serve you now in the present moment? And I guess it's a practice. It's a really hard practice, but that's what I'm trying to do.
I wonder if we are the first musicians to have come up with an analogy of a buffet being compared to institutionalized education. I think we might have just
this is
set a new record. Yeah. But I see the parallels. It's like this very preset table of food, most of which is very predictable, by the way. I think we both noticed that most buffets are kind of always the same, You could be anywhere in the world, but the breakfast buffet at any hotel will pretty much be the same shit.
Exactly.
And then one is confronted with this dilemma. Okay, it's like subconsciously we're being told we're supposed to eat all of it at one go. And then
have it all.
For me personally, it took ages before I realized, no, that's not the idea. Both in music and food.
Well, at least you got there, I'm still trying. I'm still learning, I feel like I'm at the very beginning of my journey as a musician, and I'm still learning.
Well, that being said, you've chosen one of the most noblest and idealistic approaches to nutrition, which is veganism. You've been vegan for a while.
Yes, I am.
Which is a very long-term commitment, and I don't know, that in itself is an episode's worth of conversation. But
it would be. I think it would be.
Absolutely, and I'm probably not the most qualified person to really riff with it, being the carnivore that I am. But I can't help but wonder if you're selling yourself short when you say you're still getting hang of it, because I feel like you're way more ahead than you might realize sometimes. That's just me.
Yeah, well, thank you. But I don't know. I'm listening to a lot of what I call advanced music, which it's not holistic music, it's not like crazy thing, but it seemed to me like it's just ahead of me, and that's why I'm feeling like I'm still learning, and I feel like we're always learning. But I'm listening to this amazing musician. I'm thinking of John Hopkins right now. And especially his last album, and it's so good. It's profoundly good, and I feel like he's ahead of what was needed for me and what I was trying to achieve, and I'm kind of in awe in a way, and thinking like, wow, he's there, and I'm trying to catch up, but in a good way. I'm not trying to compete in any sense, in any way. I'm just trying to realize that I'm learning every day, and how beautiful it is, and just realizing it, is a good thing for me.
It's beautiful, man. It's John Hopkins, we talked about John Hopkins quite a bit. In fact, our common mentor and professor, John Matthias, shout out to John Matthias, or Matthias,
yes.
Sorry, my bad. We were actually talking about his specific approach to music as well. Not to digress too much, but the multiplicities of experiments he did before he came back to minimal music with the piano. It's also kind of relevant to what we just talked about, I'd like to think.
Oh yes, definitely. Trying all the methods and the words and the notes and the skills and whatever, and just realizing you can't have it all, you can't play it all.
Yeah.
And going back to that simplicity, and I think I want to say it because it's really important to me. Your last album is all about that, and it's the most beautiful thing I've heard lately. It's like you going back to that root of just a voice. Of the voice is the piano is your voice, and you're not trying to overdo it. It's the beauty of each note that is intentionally selected. Maybe it's improv, but still there's a sense of intentionality and awareness that's in there that I really love and I admire a lot.
Cheers, brother. That means a lot coming from you. I generally mean that. I really appreciate that. But we want to talk about your music today.
Yes.
It'll save me some embarrassment. I'm feeling awkward now.
No worries, man.
I'm learning to accept compliments that direct. It's still a work in progress, but I sincerely do appreciate that.
It is really hard. It is really hard.
And that's actually something we want to talk about specifically, imposter syndrome, right?
Yes.
We've been open about how we both struggle with it, but I'm pretty sure most artists out there have at one level or the other. Shall we bite the bullet?
We can. Yes. Well, what you were saying about being feeling awkward with compliment, and I think I really relate to that, and I've always related to that. And I've really felt that a few years ago when I was on tour in Australia, and the people kept coming at the end of the show. They kept coming to talk to me and complimenting my work and my playing the show. Yeah. And it's amazing, I'm very grateful. But it was really hard, and I was in a particular life transition, and it was really, really hard to accept that and the compliments and trying to be okay with it And I guess it also comes from the fear of being too, well, I'm trying to find the right word, but I mean a little bit too okay with it, when it's normal that people come to you. And I don't want to get to that place,
Mm-hmm.
Still feel like a gift that I'm playing music and the people are coming to my shows and they're even talking to me and saying how great it was and how good of a moment it was for them,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still very grateful, but it's really hard. It's really hard. And I think it certainly comes from that imposter syndrome we both know, of being kind of overwhelmed with music and work and I guess life in general, and feeling like, are we worth it? Are we in the right path? And I guess it's also going back to what I was saying before of listening to music that's ahead of yourself. It's like, wow, this music it's perfect. Will I ever make something this good? And it's a hard balance. And I feel like, there is some kind of healthy amount of imposter syndrome you can have, or I mean, at least, a reserve you can have with all of it, because it's still an unusual work and lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
It's you won't go to your, I don't know, to the chef working at the local restaurant downstairs and start applauding in his kitchen. You wouldn't do that. But I mean, his work is equally even and maybe even more important than music. I don't know. I'm just saying it like that, but he's feeding people, he's making food, and it's like basic needs.
Very true.
So it's kind of going back to that as a musician and feeling worth it, and questioning your place in I was going to say in the business, but on Earth as well.
Yeah, and the ecosystem.
Yes.
On a complete side note, I think chefs apparently struggle with something similar to imposter syndrome quite often as well. Especially like apparently, yeah, like 5-star chefs, they work under severe pressure, man, because they have to deliver these like dishes which are going to be eaten. So there's the pressure of that. But at the same time, you can't. Also, in my experience, if you're cooking food under severe stress, that energy passes on to the food. And I'm being very woo-woo here, but I speak from personal experience. I happen to have been. Okay, this is a complete segue. Just bear with. I know of this tiny little startup restaurant, which was run by literally just 3 people. This was in the UK, and the chef of this tiny little restaurant was like a 5-star Michelin chef or something on those lines. And every time I'd eat there, I'd fall sick, even though the food was amazing. Turns out, this is, forgive me if this is a little weird story. Turns out the 3 people there, they were having some severe personal issues. Like it was a wife and a husband and a waitress. And apparently the chef had a thing going with the waitress. The wife knew about it. So they were working every day in that kitchen with that energy. And that energy was going into the food.
Oh my God.
I kid you not, I found out about this way later, and it was like, of course it makes sense, because they had like farm sourced local organic ingredients and a 5-star Michelin chef in there, but every time I'd eat there I'd fall sick.
Right. Yeah.
So it's quite the load people deal with too in that profession, just to be fair to chefs. Okay, that was a big segue I did there, my apologies.
That's a very interesting story, because it goes back to the energy and to the intentionality.
Indeed.
Which I was talking about. And I think it's just cultivate that in our lives and in our work. And relationship is so important.
Very true. I think food and music actually have a lot of parallels. I mean, they're both foods. One's for the body, the other's for the soul, at the risk of sounding overtly melodramatic. I think at the end of the day, I think if the source of what you're creating doesn't come from a pure space or an honest space, things can go sideways pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's for sure.
So I also want to come back to what you just said. A little bit of imposter syndrome is maybe not the worst idea. I agree with you there. I know what you mean. I'm probably on the fence on whether imposter syndrome would be, in that case, the perfect terminology. But
exactly, yeah, no, I agree. It's not the perfect words.
It's probably the worst case of that phenomena. But I think, the healthier approach to it would also be to remember that, sure, I'm awkward. Well, you and me, we are the type who feel awkward receiving compliments, maybe. So we are on the other side of the spectrum, but there is the other pole, which is the ego megalomaniac who is hungry for that constant validation and probably even makes art because he's addicted to it, or she, or they are addicted to it. And what I'm aiming for is finding that balance in between. I mean, Kenny Werner was here a couple of episodes back, and even he, and this is a giant of a man. Even he talks about how he had to learn to receive all the love he'd gotten after he wrote his book. Like thousands of musicians told him about how this book changed their lives. And he had to really learn to receive all that love and I come to my point, and he talks about how he has to constantly remind himself that he's a channel for what is being created and not a source.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very, very interesting point, because it's all about the catharsis and I guess being the channel makes it all easier to take in and to understand, because, well, I don't know how people see it, but I see it quite similar, in a similar way. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just humbling, to feel like you're a channel and you're not I guess you're not the reason or the exact spark, Mm-hmm. And it helps, really helps. And I think it really helps with ego issues as well, which you said, and this is the tricky thing with the lives we live in now. We're like social medias and all that competition that exists online with music and with any arts or any kind of business. I gotta say now, it's like all about being seen,
Indeed.
And it's less about making thoughtful and authentic content,
Very true.
And I think this is going back to simplicity again. I'm just kind of stuck on this now, but I think it's coming from your heart instead of from your ego, mind, whatever driven force,
Yeah. No, I think it's a great perspective to be stuck on.
Yeah.
I'm with you there. What's your earliest memory of struggling with imposter syndrome? You referred to the time you were on tour internationally and you were playing a series of gigs. Was that your earliest memory of dealing with this?
I think it is, because it was one of my first official tour. Mm-hmm. And it was not the first one, because the first one you're really excited about it, and I guess it's like, wow, I'm finally on tour. Yeah. I'm around, like I'm in Australia right now, playing in Sydney and whatever, and it feels really exciting. Mm-hmm. And by the third tour, you get used to it because you're a human being, and things start to get real, Mm-hmm. And I guess you can't really leave your life on side, which many musicians probably do, and which I have done before, and it's like it's coming back at you now, and you're in this tour, but you can't get away.
Now, I was just about to ask you, you hit the nail on the head. At some point, once the initial high is over, things start getting real. So you want to take us through how things started getting real?
Well, yes, on tour. It was all on tour. I'm really coming from that place. It was a really tricky tour. Mm-hmm. we started because we do it independently. We don't have a big label. We're not signed to any majors or anything. So it's all work of love, and teamwork. And we had a really massive tour in Australia. I'm talking like 3-4 months tour.
Wow.
In a van. And it's only the three of us in a van, touring, driving, playing, cooking, blah, 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 blah,
Wow.
Even though we're friends, even though we have like an amazing relationship, once you spend, I think, 5 days in a row in a car, because we were driving through a desert, 5 days in a row in a car, it's almost like 16 hours a day in the van, in a small van. Things start to get complicated because we're human beings and we have feelings and we have different perspective of life, and we all experience it differently. And it was really hard for me because I was going through a transition at home, and I was not feeling in my place, and then I was on tour and I started feeling that not in my place sensation on tour. And I think that was getting to me. It was getting real, It wasn't the highs of being on tour anymore. It was being someone struggling with mental issues on tour in a van for 5 days, like for 3 months, and 5 days in a row, and then arriving to a place at, I don't know, sound check, get in at 4, sound check at 5. Gig at 8, and it's like you do it again tomorrow, and it's amazing. And I love that, being able to tour. I'm so grateful for it, but it's really hard. And I think the thing is that's complicated sometimes with the crowd and the audience coming to talk to you at the end, is that they don't realize how hard it is because they all see the glamour side of it. It's like you're on tour. It's like rock and roll. You're living the dream, and you actually are. But it's still a job. It's still hard, and there is some downside, and people keep saying, "Oh, you must be so excited, you must be so happy," and you truly are. But you also going through some human troubles.
Yeah, some serious shit that goes down, man.
I didn't want to say the word, but exactly.
We're all about. You're happy to just.
Right.
No, this is rated explicit anyway, so don't worry about that.
Right. So you're going through some real shit,
Yeah.
And so it started getting real when we started not getting along in the band anymore, and starting to play shows without talking to each other.
Oh God, yeah, been there, bro. Been there. I hear you.
And it's horrible because first off, they're your friends, and it's clear that you're both going through something, but it's so hard because you don't have the space and I guess the healthy lifestyle to actually talk about in a good way. You eat junk food most of the time, even though you try not to. You kind of end up eating bad food, even if you make sandwiches and you try to make healthy sandwiches, it's still sandwiches in the end. You know what I'm talking about? And
hard relate, man. I so hear you right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, I'm trying to eat healthy food, but don't play game. You're still eating a sandwich.
It's still a fucking sandwich.
Exactly, and then you're driving through the whole day, and you're coming back home late, and you have a different bed every night, and it's real. And this is what happened to me.
Oh yeah.
I don't really like to use the term burnout, but it felt like a burnout, and I didn't say it back then. I just felt really burned out.
Yeah, I hear you.
And that's when I started having serious issues with being on tour and with people giving me compliment, because it was hard. It happened a few times actually. I was crying before getting on stage, literally 5 minutes before the start, and then you have to put on a show because, people still want to see something positive, and I'm really down for that, you know. And I don't want to bring my my darkness on stage all the time, because I tend to write dark music anyway. So I might as well be a smiling person, you know, on stage, you know, or whatever, you know. And it was hard trying to be true to myself and to what I was going on, but still it's doing the things I needed to do, like on my contract in a way. You know, I was on tour and people wanted to see live music and wanted to enjoy the show. They wanted to be entertained. They wanted to hear great music, and, you know, and you kind of have a contract with them, even if it's unspoken, you know?
Yeah, sure. It's a commitment.
It's commitment, you know? And so it was hard then, you know, feeling worth it and feeling worthy of being there on tour.
Yeah, hard relate, man. So many points that need to be unpacked there. To start off with, you know, this entire choice of words about put on a show in music in itself is something that really needs to be re-examined in this day and age.
Yeah.
Playing music is not really about putting on a show. It can be sometimes, but you know, I think the whole connotations that come with the word show business and its relevance to music in itself is it's murky waters. It's really murky waters, you know. In a way, I'm almost thankful that the arts ecosystem has become so extremely compartmentalized in a way. Music on its own is often not really even looked upon as an independent, autonomous entity in this day and age. It's usually in conjunction to video or art installation or something else. That's where it's headed. Into everything's getting interdisciplinary. But there's a more old school thought, you know, like rock concerts and this whole light and showtime, you know, which is beautiful and gorgeous. And I've had my tiny little share of that. I've been lucky enough. But I noticed somewhere along the line, wow, there's something off with the whole idea about a musician putting on a show. I'm not sure if it's zeitgeist relevant anymore.
Yeah, well, I think it's a very good point you're making. And I think going back to what you were saying about rock music and the show around it is still part of the philosophy, you know. And I'm talking about what I was going through in a rock band context, you know, and I was
really?
playing rock.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yes, it was like a duo most of the time, but playing rock, blues, psychedelic music, you know. So it was part of the thing, you know, and I guess people like it, you know, and they come to see something visualized.
Yeah,
as
absolutely.
well.
Yeah, just to clarify, I love rock music. No.
Definitely,
I actually grew up in rock music. It was not so much the genre itself. I mean, there's rave parties and, like, you know, K-pop concerts with the same concept as well. I mean, just random references there. It's not so much the genre, but this whole show business and music thing. Again, I'm just to clarify, I keep saying this for my listeners. This is not judgment; it's an observation and curiosity with regards to what's the root behind this, because that theatrical aspect to music is it's, I think, the toll it takes on the artists, especially musicians, not just artists, is something that is grossly underestimated. It's different with an actor, you know, but a musician or like a oral artist is not an actor. He's already giving 120% when he's playing music. Then the additional baggage and the additional job of, living up to certain theatrical expectations. You know, I'm not criticizing it. What I'm saying is it's just something that's never been given its due validation. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, exactly. And I think expectation is the key word, because I think due to the kind of rock and roll era from like 40 years ago or I don't know, 30 years ago, we kind of still have that in people, you know. And it's like a certain age of music lovers still really love rock music, but from the 70s and from what they experienced when they were young. Indeed. And going through that period, and they want to recreate and feel that emotion again. So it's like when you're coming on tour and you're like compared with like Led Zeppelin. We were compared with Led Zeppelin, and my bandmate Zika Shed was compared with Jimi Hendrix, and she's an amazing musician and singer, and Nina Simone as well. It's like people, they kind of expect you to live the rock and roll lifestyle, and they kind of expect you to be a rock and roll star in a way, and they want to see that on stage. So you kind of act the part,
Yeah, and before you know it, you're that's exactly it, and you don't realize when you've started acting the part. By the time you realize, you're already close to so-called burnout.
Exactly, and then you have to find again the right balance between that thing the contract you signed. Again, it's not like a literal contract, but the commitment you signed and your authenticity.
Yep.
And it has to be authentic to be good, I think, in the end.
Exactly, and that's at the end of the day the biggest challenge, that in spite of all the planning and administration and the promo and the business side of it, and most of us don't grow rich doing this unless we're signed to, or even if you're signed to a major label these days, and figuring out how to pay rent, being far away from your loved ones. And at the end of it all, let's not forget, we're supposed to be authentic while we do it.
Yeah. Yes, and you're probably going through so many things at once on tour.
Yeah.
And you have to deal with all of that.
Yeah.
And put on a great show. Sorry for put on, but it's like you have to be on stage at 8 or whatever, and you have to play a good set because people, and I'm so grateful for that. People are actually coming to see you. They getting dressed, they're getting in the car, they're driving, they're buying the ticket. It's like it's a process to come to a show. And I think like we might have lost it now because we've been in lockdown for ages and we haven't been in a show in long time. But it's a whole thing. It's not like you're in your apartment watching TV. No, you actually have to go through so many stages to get to the show.
Yeah.
And I feel the commitment to these people. I feel committed because I'm super grateful, and I'm super. When I see 20 people, when I see 2 people, when I see 2,000, whatever, I'm like grateful for each one of them. And I want to play the best of my ability.
Exactly. And that is why I think the imposter syndrome is so painful, because you've literally dedicated your entire lifestyle for that one moment where you can be on stage and do your very best for these people. And then once you're done, you're empty, you're exhausted. And these people want to come up and tell you how much you gave them what you wanted to give them, but you can't take it back because you're just empty, and you're like, and it's this strange, twisted thing that starts going on in your head. It's like, why can't I receive the love back from these people?
Yes. And I think many people from this industry feel that way.
Yeah.
And it's like often after a show, you feel lonely in a way that,
Fuck yeah, tell me about it, man. Yeah.
It's like you've been in that crazy, beautiful energy surrounded with amazing people, and suddenly you're in your bed alone.
Yeah.
And it's like there's no transition. It's
cold turkey.
It can be quite abrupt.
Turkey. Yeah.
It can be quite abrupt. So this is another thing that adds up to the whole healthy issue on tour, mental issues on tour.
Indeed.
Dealing with this and you're in your bed and you think, but it was amazing and all those people loved it. Why am I feeling down?
Yeah.
Am I weird? Am I not worthy?
Yeah.
What is it,
Yeah. Oh, fuck yeah. I hear you, man. It's, and therein, and now that we've talked about the nitty-gritties of this experience, this would be a good time to maybe get into a little more of a contemplative state on what's going on here. And I know we can talk about this because we have in the past. It's that complete lack of balance in our everyday lifestyle as musicians, right? We're so used to, that momentary high of being on stage or just playing music generally can be so explosive that it gives you the illusion of the rest of your life being irrelevant.
It does. It does. And I think I keep saying balance because it feels like it's a lack of balance often. Getting all the highs and energy from playing music and being surrounded with amazing people and finding yourself not knowing how to handle it,
People who you love and you want to give your best to, but people who are also actually quite clueless to the amount of work you're putting in.
Exactly.
Like literally clueless, with all due respect, and not because it's not the job.
Oh, yeah.
They're just audiences. They're the reason we're doing this in a way.
Yeah.
But also that complete oblivion to the journey, the 20,000 hours of work for those 2 hours of playing music on stage.
If even. Yeah.
Is something there, even exactly. And the complete oblivion audiences after that, it can be really quite a bit to handle at times.
Yes, and I think you start to question it when you look at the numbers, and I'm kind of a person who likes the numbers, and you look at the number and you're like on tour for 20 something days, and you realize you have 10 shows or blah blah blah, and then you look at the percentage of music you actually play.
Oh God!
And I tell you, it's under 1% most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
very true.
But people expect you to be a musician, but there is so much more to handle on tour or in a musical journey. It's not just that.
So true.
And it's tricky to understand that as a young musician because you think it's all about the music, and I think that's when things start to get real. It's when you realize it's not only about that moment. You still are a human being going through this life, and you have to take this into consideration when you're on tour.
Very true. Well, here's hoping we are all back on tour again in a better state of mind.
Oh yeah, I miss it. I really miss it.
Yeah,
Don't get me wrong.
No, that's the craziest part, right? We all miss it, and even when we're actually going through hell, we still miss it. That's the irony. But that being said, let's get to the other side and leave our audiences with a more the other side to the story, which is musicians all over the world, audiences even to a certain degree, are starting to realize the mental health implications of these lifestyles on artists. And I mean, it's not just artists, needless to say, but since we're both actually practicing artists, let's stick to that. How has the journey been in recuperating since that, for lack of a better term, burnout? And what have your tools been since to kind of find that balance in your life? Because I know for a fact that it's something you've worked really hard at. It's very apparent in your music and the way you live your life. We interact on a regular basis. So what have your tools been to strike that balance?
So first off, when I came back from tour, I thought I needed a break from music, and because I was so in it that I thought I might not need music for a while. So I stopped playing music. And after a week, I became insane. So I was lucky enough to have a studio, and a friend of mine called me to work on a project, and I was like, yes, this is what I need, and it really made me feel better.
Nice.
But in hindsight now, I think what I've done that's really changed my life in general, but my musical practice as well, and my musical journey, is having another practice, another routine, which is yoga and meditation.
Yeah.
And this has been a game changer, a really game changer. And I keep saying balance, and I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think yoga means balance, doesn't it? Or finding balance.
It actually means what it means is loosely translated. It's what it refers to is integration. Well, literally translated, yoga means binding or adding.
Right. Okay.
It's a little tricky to do a little translation, but
right. Yeah.
what you're saying is not wrong, but it doesn't translate very well outside the realms of.
And I like that about it. It's something more than that, and I think it really, really helped me on a day-to-day basis. And I've been practicing yoga for, I don't know, 3 years maybe now, every day.
How do you come across it?
It's funny. It's a kind of interesting situation, because when I was a teenager, I had never heard of yoga ever. And a teacher in high school was talking to us about how he does meditation and yoga, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I had no clue what it was. No clue. I came back home and I said to my parents, I want to do yoga. And I used to be like a really optimistic kid, and they were like, really? What do you want to do in yoga? What is it? And I didn't even know. So it was like, I didn't end up doing yoga back then.
This was in Lausanne?
This was in Lausanne, yeah. Well, close to Lausanne, yeah.
Do you have a lot of yoga schools in Lausanne?
Yeah, they are, and they were back then, like 10 or 12 years ago. I can't remember now. Yeah, something like that.
Keep going.
So, and it was like, I wanted to do something. I had no idea what it was, but still, I thought it was amazing. Anyway, years pass, and a good friend of my wife does yoga a lot, if not every day. And it was very inspiring to talk to her about that. And I said once, can you teach me? Can you show me? Because I want to start, but I don't know where to start from. And she was like, okay, well, let's do it next time or whatever. And she gave us our first yoga lesson as a friend. It was not like we paid, or it's not like she's trained, but she showed us what she learned, and she was doing yoga for like 10 or 15 years at that time.
Wow. She was probably a better teacher than a lot of other teachers.
Yeah, I think so. And I think she's she's got that teaching thing, but I don't know if she knows about it. And shout out to her if she hears that, because it's going to be interesting.
Shout out Sebastian's first yoga.
Yeah. So she gave us our first yoga lesson, and it was like, wow, that's the thing, But I didn't quite understand yet what it was all about. And then a few months passed, and we were on holidays with my wife and her and her husband. And I was like, can you give us a second lesson? She was like, okay, I can. So she did. And I was like, oh my God, this is great. And this, and I'm doing a lot of surfing. And in the surfing community, there's a lot about yoga, and people talks about it a lot, and it's often quite a good compliment to the surf practice.
Oh yeah, you're a surfer. I'd forgotten that bit. Mad respect, man.
Thank you. So, I was kind of in there already. And so I had those 2 lessons with my friend, and then the pandemic hit big time. And I was like, this is it. I need to start it with like online lessons and just simple, simple practices. And I started implementing it in my day-to-day life.
Beautiful.
And then, and I could see how it was improving my life, improving my body, improving my digestion, improving my creativity as well. I was more fluid in a way. I was less constrained to things. And then I think it's kind of a natural thing to go into meditation when you do yoga as well.
Pretty
I don't
much.
know. I'm just
yeah, very much so.
So I then started to meditate, and I'm at the very beginning of my journey. I know that because I haven't been doing meditation for like a long time, But I'm trying to do it every day, or at least every 2 or 3 days, and this is a big thing now for me as well. Just finding the space, the mental headspace, and the quietness. That's so different to what we are going through and what we are exposed to in general. It's like a lot of informations with socials and social medias and medias in general. It's like you have like a ton of information, and your brain can go a bit crazy. And yoga and meditation really helped me to calm that and to find my space and to feel worthy. So that's going back to imposter syndrome. I started trying to add mantras and like, I am worthy, that mantra, and just that sentence, and saying it when I was doing yoga or when I'm meditating, and just reminding to breathe.
So like affirmations?
Affirmation, more like affirmation.
No need to apologize. I was just clarifying. Yeah, actually, it sounds cheesy, but there's actually some solid scientific backup to the effectiveness of this thing. It has its roots in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, because our brains, subconscious brains, are like tape recorders. So whether we want to or not, we're constantly recording all the noise going around us. So if you're bombarded with constant negativity on the news, whether we like it or not, all that information is being recorded, in the tape. So sometimes we do need the counterbalance of something as banal as I am worthy, apparently banal, to counterbalance this noise within, the dark noise within, to kind of shed a little more light on it, if that, at this risk of sounding melodramatic. So
you don't.
Yeah, I mean, about this. Just a little note I want to put in there for my audiences as well. It's and a lot of people tend to find these practices, I'm doing quote marks here, cheesy, but try it out. You might be surprised at the kind of value it adds to your life.
Definitely, and I come from a very down-to-earth culture and family.
Indeed, I know. I mean,
and I've never been into that kind of holistic / well-being approach of life. I don't know how to put it in words, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
and it's I can only tell from my perspective, but I come from a very down-to-earth thing, and it's changed my life. And I thought it was cheesy to say I am worthy or I am loved or whatever, but it's not. And just saying it or writing it does affect you in such a positive way. It will help you. I'm 100% sure of it, but you have to give it a try.
Yeah, totally with you on that. I think another point to also examine closely, worthy of examination, is the fact that why do we feel uncomfortable saying I am worthy? There is a lot to unpack there, primarily because, it kind of circles back to imposter syndrome indirectly as well, because it isn't easy to always believe that we are worthy or we are loved. There is enough hatred out there to make us think otherwise every now and then. It isn't as easy as an adult.
Yes, it's not, because I think we tend to compare ourselves a lot to others, and that's a lot to do with social medias again, and I keep going back to that, even though I think they can be great. But it's hard when you see things and when you see people having that kind of life you wish you could have, but in the end you don't know if they really have the kind of life you wish you would have. They might have some darker issue than you have.
Indeed. A wise man once said, and I say man because he actually was a man, a wise man once said, we're dealing with your behind the scenes versus their highlights.
Exactly. This is it. This is the whole thing.
You could never win that war.
Yes, it's like what do you want to do against that?
Yeah.
But we still do it because that's what we see, and that's what we are being told that's normal. Putting stories and things like I'm great, I'm blah blah blah, I'm here, I'm there, and I think it's cool to share things, with the community and with friends and with new people, but you have to find the right place, your place in this kind of crazy, scary world.
Yeah.
And I think it does affect that imposter syndrome. And if not, it makes the imposter syndrome appear quite often, comparing yourself to others on social media, or at least it can.
Hard relate, man. And I can to contribute to that energy. I start my day with journaling, which includes affirmations as well.
Wow.
And it's been a practice I've been keeping up since 2017.
Wow.
2017 is when I went into therapy. It's the first time I actually kind of embraced therapy full time. And I have the privilege of two really very skilled and very compassionate therapists I work with. And it's been a game changer. I think over the past, since 2017, I might have missed 5 days. And those 5 days were on purpose. I was like, okay, it's good to take a break from the pattern. And in my case, I can only say I'm still at the tip of the iceberg. And that's the scariest part in a way, in a good way.
In a good way.
But at least I see the iceberg now, that's the thing. These icebergs, they're usually invisible.
Mm-hmm.
That is scary. It's like you're completely in Titanic mode because you don't even see the icebergs in the first place. Forget getting down to the bottom. It's like you don't even know they're out there. So for anyone who's listening and wondering what a good way to start a self-care program is, affirmations, journaling, totally endorse them.
Yes, and I think I've learned to stay off screen in the morning, and that's been really helpful as well. And that goes back to what you were saying about just starting your day with journaling or doing something that you care about. Music or meditation or whatever. It's you have to think about yourself first, and that's not an ego thing.
Not at all.
You're going through this life. And if you're going through it with like so much pain and issues, it's going to be hard to navigate with other people's as well.
Absolutely.
So I think it's all about alignment with yourself.
Very true. And I think you address a very important point there. The lines between self-care and selfishness, what is often referred to as selfishness, they can be blurry at times, but every now and then, it's probably not the worst idea to err on the side of selfishness in an attempt to develop a legit self-care program. That is probably still the safer side to err on because, codependency, which is the other side, or martyrdom or victimhood, wherein you're trying to help others from a space where you're not in a position to even help yourself. That's a catastrophe waiting to happen.
Oh my God. Don't tell me about that.
Yeah. We all know it. We just don't realize it.
Yes.
Touring musicians, like you said, 2-3 people in a van, if they don't have the skills to take care of themselves, people have literally murdered each other because it's true.
Yeah.
I'm getting really dark here, but it has happened. Apologies,
this is
people.
The twist now.
Yeah, sorry about that. I went a little overboard there, but it's true. It happens. So, for anyone who thinks working on the self-care routines is selfish, be selfish, figure it out. Err on that side instead. It's still the better side to err on, in my humble opinion.
And I think you realize that it's not selfish, You realize that you serve a lot more when you are...
Exactly.
Doing better with yourself first, you serve a lot more. It's like it's so obvious when you do it that you can't even say it's selfish because It is not.
Yeah. Thank you, man.
So-
You made the same point in a much nicer way.
No, but I like your darker side, man.
Well,
all good.
Well, careful there. I mean, careful what you wish for. But no, I'm personally, I think darkness is only one other half of the light. There is no light without darkness. That's the school
Exactly.
I come from. So I'm comfortable with darkness. It's just important to remember its role in the bigger picture.
Exactly. That's it.
I feel like I keep interrupting you. Let's wind back a little. We're over an hour now, and I do want to respect your time. I mean, we've gone really deep, man, but I wouldn't like to let you go without talking about your recent music a little, because I love the EP you released. For my audiences, make sure you go check it out. It's one of the most beautiful pieces of music I've heard this year. I really had it on loop for quite a few weeks after it was released, and I'm going to circle back to what I started off with. You strike this super elegant, finely tuned balance between minimal aesthetics, extremely well thought out, intricate arrangements, very delicately placed actually, impeccable production ethic. And all of it come together to create this super comfortable, inviting space of all-around goodness. So what are the tricks of the trades here, Sebastien? Tell us your secrets.
Oh my God, now up. But I think the trickiest part now is taking all the compliment in,
Well, now you know you have a self-care program now, so you should, deal
Yeah, I
with
know.
it.
It's all good. I'm worthy. It's all good.
There you go.
Well, I think the secret is listening and listening to what's going on. And I don't want to get too techie because I don't think it's the right conversation now. But it's really about listening to what you're playing, to what you respond to as well. Because ultimately, when you're recording or producing or whatever, you're putting down ideas and you have to respond. It's like a dialogue, a conversation, even if it's with yourself because you're producing on your own or with a band or whatever.
Beautiful.
It's a conversation, and I think it's really about understanding how to respond to sound. And this is what I'm trying to do a lot when I'm writing and producing, even if we're going back to that channeling thing you were talking about before. It's about responding to that channel, and that channeling and that energy you get when you're inspired by something,
Yeah, that makes total sense, actually. Thank you for addressing that. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. That is kind of my mantra while playing music as well, listening. That being said, I mean, there's listening, and a lot of people who aim to listen or even claim to be listening, and I'm putting myself out on a ledge here, aren't really that great at that skill, right? So what are your pointers at developing your listening skills to a level where you actually serve the way you do?
Stop playing the instrument. That's what I do.
Fuck yeah. Bingo. Yeah.
And I think in the band context, the best way to listen is often to stop playing, just to listen and find your place, It's all the same in the end. It's alignment with the conversation you have with the drummer and with the playing of the drummer and just responding to that energy and to that flow and to that wave that the synth is playing or whatever. I'm just saying random instruments now, but it's all about. It's not about you. It's about serving the music you're making. And this is a really important point. I don't think the music is about you at all. And you're the channel. That's it. You're serving the music. You're serving the purpose of music with a big M. It's like it's not about Sebastien or
TL.
It's like it's what you're making now that's going to be played and that's going to be heard. do you really want to be about? You really want it to be about you? I don't think it wouldn't be authentic if that was your energy, you know. So that's the thing that I keep trying to work with when I'm doing music, and because I have my own project that you talked about, Univers-Îls, and I have another one which is called OVERSEA. But I also produce people and I work with different artists, and I really learned that it was not about me in those cases. You know, you're really there to serve the song that she or her or him or whatever, whoever wrote the song, you know. And it's really important to acknowledge that you're not there to be flashy or whatever and to be in the front, in the lead, you know. You're there to serve that song, that part, that recording, that performance or whatever. It's really where I come from when I'm making music.
You are officially family now. Those could have been words out of my mouth. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree on every single count. Amen, man. Amen.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is it. I have no other secrets than just listening. Because when you listen to your friends and your bandmates, you're listening to your heart as well.
Yeah.
And it's all about that. Wouldn't make sense to make something just that's not coming from the heart. I'm just going to keep it at that.
Yeah. Since we have gotten this deep though, this feels like an opportunity. I don't want to let go. What we basically refer to is the intent that's required to be a good listener, right? There is another dimension to it though. Yes. And I'm going to use the analogy for language. So sometimes even when you are listening to something and you intend to listen, you don't know what's happening because it's a language you just don't understand.
Very true.
And I feel like in this day and age, in a global musical ecosystem, I think it's imperative that musicians do whatever they can, or artists do, to learn the basics of what is global music language.
Yes.
And that's another thing I would like to add for my listeners as well. The intent is definitely where it starts. Without it, you have no chance, or we have no chance. But that doesn't mean it bypasses the need to learn the language. It also can be a very confusing space to be in, because a lot of times you want to listen, you have the intent, but you just don't know what's going on. So that's another thing I want to put out there. Someone like Sebastien has also put in the work to understand that global language. You know, you could be working on a project anywhere in the world and you'd have a basic idea of what everyone's doing. So what's the work you put in to get there, that skill set part of it?
Well, I guess since I started playing music, I've always learned to read. I mean, I'm not like a great reader, if I may say. I couldn't read a whole crazy score in 2 seconds.
Yeah, it's my Achilles heel.
I couldn't. It would take me a few minutes, you know, and maybe more, a few hours. But I can read and I can understand some basic information, and it's a conversation again, you know. If an artist asks you to play an A minor, what is an A minor, you know? It can be many things, but still it has some kind of base. And I've always put a lot of work learning to have this conversation, you know, and understanding what a scale is. And I'm not saying that you should go into music theory and like in a deep manner, not at all. But I think it's important to understand what you do, and I really think it will improve music. But there are some amazing artists out there who don't actually know how to read or how to play an A minor, but they're actually playing an A minor, you know. But I think in the end, and as a musician, as a producer, as a session player, it will improve your work and your I don't want to say that. I was going to say professionalism, but I just don't like the sound of it. But you know, it will improve your
fluency.
Yeah, fluency. Thank you. I think it sounds better. And yes, and I think this is what I've always worked on. Even now I'm going back to, and you said it, I'm going back to studies. I'm doing a master degree because I want to push it more. But I don't think it's for everyone, and it just works for me.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to be able to understand. And I mean, it's like learning a language, and you said it, if you're trying to read or to listen to a language you don't actually know at all, you won't be able to understand.
Very true.
And the music is universal. You can be in Africa or India or Europe or whatever, you will be able to communicate with music. But for that, you need some kind of skills, you need to learn to understand and to listen. Learn to listen. This is it.
I guess what we're getting at is the two go hand in hand, the intent and the skills to actually execute what we intend. I found it very inspiring and very, I almost said impressive, but that also kind of doesn't really cut it. Not the right energy. But I found it really so refreshing and just so enjoyable to work with you, because you brought a certain very specific kind of sound into some of the material we've been working on for my portfolio. Some of it is pretty complex, and oftentimes musicians with a background inherently in complex music seem to lose this very specific side, which I was looking for when I asked you to join us on the ensemble. You know what I'm getting at, right?
Yes, I am. I definitely am.
And I'm saying this from a space of compassion, because it's easy to get lost in that cerebral trip down a rabbit hole, and very few retain that right balance. And I found it wonderful how you found your place in some music which was partially quite complex, and you managed to bring that organic, down to earth, but deep dimension to it, which was a very welcome counterbalance to potentially otherwise nerdy genre music. So thanks for making my music sound less nerdy.
Well, that's what I do,
Yeah, kind of. And I'm the guy who brings the snobbery in for those who.
You're not. But it's funny you actually say that, because the intellectual thing in music almost made me quit music when I was at uni.
Yeah.
And because it was getting too crazy for me. It was getting away from that authenticity I was talking about.
Yep.
And I almost quitted uni because of that. And I met some amazing artists and musicians, and they helped me go back to what was authentic, because at uni it was all about being fast, playing that lick and playing that scale that you just learn, and
testosterone music.
It was. And I kind of lost it. It was like, I don't resonate with it. I'm not in competition with anybody. I'm trying to do something with connections, and it was not the right connections out there, So I think this is all about it, and I think you've done it really well, because what you call nerdy music, I don't think your song was nerdy music. It had some complexity, but it was not nerdy at all. It was not like competitive or elitistic. It was really beautiful, and I think it came from that place. Again.
Cheers, man. I really appreciate that. I mean, that's the balance I try to strike. I want to keep things, for lack of a better term, high. I have high standards, and I'm just going to own it. I'll never be a guy who plays in a grunge band or a punk rock band. It's just not who I am. With complete respect, a part of me even has wished I could be one of that crowd. I really have. Especially shit, man. I wish I was cool enough to kind of play in a punk band. I'll never be able to be that guy. But I also don't want to be elitist about music, and it is a bit of a tightrope act sometimes.
Yes, it can be hard, finding that right place in between, because it's easy to get caught when you're a musician and you have a certain knowledge in music and you have like theory background. It's easy to get caught on chords and inversions and just, you know, crazy scales.
Theory, yeah.
But yeah, so I understand why you're trying to say, because it's just I see what you're doing. It's amazing, and I really like your style for that. You know.
Cheers, man. I appreciate it. I feel a little guilty now because I feel like I might have hijacked the conversation a little.
No, you haven't. No, you haven't. It was a very good point.
I actually wanted to focus more on your EP. Could you please spell it out for us? Because I'm going to murder the pronunciation.
So my solo project is called Univers-Îls. That's the French version. You can say Univers-Îls in English.
Mm-hmm.
And it means galaxy, but it's a kind of a play on word with galaxy, because back then, I think in the 18th century, they used to call galaxy Univers Island in a way, because Univers-Îls means universe islands. And I kind of made it work for me. And so it means that, but the EP is Voyager 2. And Voyager 2 was a spaceship that was sent by NASA, I think, in the 70s or late 70s on a tour of the great planets of our solar system. Mm-hmm. And I was really inspired by that, because I can see some kind of parallel between the universe exploration and exploring our cosmos, mm-hmm. and exploring ourselves. You know, I can see the parallel and the poetic lines in between. So that's all about that. This EP is about that parallel.
That's beautiful, man. Tell us more. How did your fascination with astronomy start off?
I don't know. I've always been fascinated with looking at the stars, and I've never been like a physician about it. You know, it's just like a very, very poetic thing for me, and it's very. I had one of the most amazing experience on tour in Australia. That was that tour I was talking about, and we were in the deserts, and we had a dinner under the stars. But like under the stars.
Wow.
I mean it, there was no light, wow. No sound, and it was like almost it wasn't not a 360 thing, but it felt like a 360 thing. Mm. It was only stars and galaxies. They showed us galaxy with a telescope, and it was the most amazing experience I had.
Sounds like it.
And I think I've always been fascinated with that, you know, exploring the universe. And although I don't think we should live on another planet, I'm not that kind of person.
Me neither.
But I think it's interesting to understand what's going on up there, and if we actually can. I'm not even sure if we can, but you know, it's very philosophic and poetic.
Mm.
So I've always been drawn to that. And when I started writing this EP, I realized there was that parallel. I didn't even do it on purpose. The parallel was clear. I was talking about Neptune, the planet, but Neptune is my bunny pet, and wow. He changed my life big times, you know. And is like his free roam, and is in the house and in the studio with me a lot of the time. And when I wrote the song Neptune, I was like, wow, I can see now how my bunny Neptune helped me, and how it all relates to the universe, because Neptune, the planet, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then there was another song called Terre, which means Earth, the planet Earth. And this with Insight, it's a kind of a node to nature, you know, and the importance to getting back to that root of connection with nature. So it's all linked in some way, because there was Neptune, Terre, Earth, and one of my favorite songs on this album is Metropolis, and it's, you know, I feel like the album, the EP, whatever, starts from out there in the universe and gets closer to you. It goes from being a universal thing, it passes Neptune, it comes down to Earth, and it arrives at Metropolis, which was where I lived, you know, a city, a metropole. And I like that because I was getting closer to myself when I was making this record, and I was getting closer to my emotion and understanding them. I mean, I was getting closer, and I'm still learning. But
no, I hear you there.
It has that parallel, big time.
Wow, that sounds fascinating.
But it's not like I made it on purpose, you know. I realized that afterwards, and I was like, "Wow, this is amazing," because it's all in there. I guess what you really enjoy in life and in the world gets put into your music and to your art. And sometimes you forget it because you're caught up with the work, in quote, work side of music. You know, you're making it for a living. It's the thing. So then when you realize that it's more than that, and it's like, yeah, actually, that's right. It's more than that. It's not only about the work in music. It's about playing music and channeling that energy and that emotion or whatever sensation that you're going through.
Wow.
I got lost there, but you know.
No, it was a beautiful space to be lost in. I really enjoyed that trip, actually.
Thank you.
In fact, it resonates deeply with me. But because my moniker, Every Now Here, and the body of work I'm working on, Removement, actually is based on a very similar philosophy to yours. But I've already hijacked too much of this conversation with my stories.
You haven't. Stop it. You haven't.
No, I haven't, though. So I want to keep focused, especially since we're tapering off now. Wow, man, 1.5 hours just flew, huh?
Yeah. Yes.
And we're going to have a lot more of these, I know, in the coming future, in the near future. But for now, for our listeners, as we bring this conversation towards its and what's the best way we can support you, Sebastien? Your work, your music?
Well, I guess it's listening to the music with intention and not listening it with the kind of meditized and economic thing and just not paying attention, you know. I think ultimately it's going on whatever, Spotify or I don't know, whatever works for you, and listening with your heart and your ears.
Beautiful. FYI for my listeners, as always, all links to the artist will be available on the episode notes, so please make sure you do check those out and choose a platform of your choice to support Sebastien here. It's been an absolute pleasure, my man.
Thank you so much, DL. It's been a pleasure for me too.
All mine, and we'll be in touch either ways.
Yes.
And
sure.
There is one last question I do want to ask. We are on our literally on our last minute. It's a question I don't ask everyone, but it is kind of like a semi-mission statement. So I don't know if you know this, but the first word of this podcast, tapasya, means sacred fire. Wherein sacred fire in ancient shamanic cultures in India referred to the kind of fire where you wanted to burn off anything you wanted to rid your life of. I did a bad job of describing that analogy, but I'm hoping you get a vibe for it. So if you were in front of a sacred fire right now, what would you burn away?
Expectations.
Ooh, boom. Boom. I love that.
Yeah.
It's one of the best answers I've had I think all time. Yeah.
Definitely expectation. Just be yourself and be free, you know, and do what makes you feel good, as long as you're not harming people, you know. But I'm sure that if you do it with your heart, it won't be that. So, yeah, burn the expectation.
Beautiful. On that note, FYI, I'm stopping the recording. Gratitude from the bottom of my heart for listening till the very end. Please consider taking a minute to subscribe to our show so you know when the next episode is out. This is a labor of love, one I hope snowballs into one that's sustainable in its attempt to support independent thought and authentic relating. While having you as a regular member of our audience is what makes that a realistic prospect. Much love and talk soon. Just another voice out in